if you fear that we are likely to face some kind of terrorism activities, obviously a president will move with a few guns. If the president, for example, has grown beyond what would have been expected, you may find that actually an ambulance will be escorted. But when a president moves with a toilet, then you know there is also a problem of emergencies that are incalculable. So I am saying, why would we have an African passport only to be given to those that actually don't need it? I shudder. If anybody would tell me that there would have been a restriction of any president or minister to enter a specific country within Africa for either trade or other purposes. So if that doesn't exist, then what exists that creates the logical possibility for you only to restrict an African passport to those that actually do not need it, or in fact those who issue it? When you look at the regional economic communities, in Africa we have got 8, but only 4 of those are succinct on the possibility of regional integration. Most of them are grappling over the science of economic community, economic integration, markets, and only for the East African community, for example, the COMESA, they gloss over, and I am saying glossing over because I know they create regional integration as a last limb that usually is never achievable. Because achieving regional integration includes ceding, first of all, power, ceding sovereignty. But we have leaders that can't give power even to their own children. So we know they cannot voluntarily cede power to a next leader. There is a problem. They are tainted with what we call the honorific ability limited. The existence of extreme honorableness, hubris. They are so big that for you to advise them, most likely you are treading a slippery ground. And that's what we have read on the African continent. Africans are completely different from their leaders. Even when we are discussing integration ideas, when we are discussing market integration, but our people are usually already there. We are only discussing for the sole purpose of creating documentation to validate their activities. So they are different. The people we lead differ from the leaders, even in terms of thinking. When we are trying to admit South Sudan here in the East African community integration process, particularly in regards to the 3 major limbs, the 5th limb of political federation, that one I think is a logical impossibility. Everybody was saying, what are you merging? Why are you bringing Somalia? Why are you bringing South Sudan? The question would be, for us lawyers in Uganda, we had already received the extreme instructions that were towards the possibility that how would we now achieve the enforcement of trade relations, trade agreements that had been violated between Ugandans and South Sudanese. The question is, there was no court to try any eventual breaches of such. Until, of course, obviously, when you admit them into the fold of the East African community, that therefore their matters would be the subject of resolution by the East African Community Court of Justice. Now that is where the problem lies. That leaders are so sluggish that usually they find the people they lead already in the area only to address them on things they know, but they put them in language that sometimes, of course, our population don't understand. So, respect for treaty obligations. I'm trying to run as fast as possible. Ugandans and Africans per se are extremely quick at appending signatures to treaties without definitely following up on what the obligations are under those treaties. As an advocate of courts of judicature, I have been arguing with the states. There was a time I sued Uganda, Tanzania, Burundi, Rwanda, and most of the states were arguing sovereignty as one of the defenses against fulfillment of the obligations under the East African Community Treaty. Appending a signature to a regional treaty is an act of sovereignty. So you cannot turn around and argue sovereignty as a defense against fulfillment of the requirements of the obligations. You look at all these leaders, they give sublime speeches, very brilliant speeches, when they go to everywhere, beginning with those that existed before we were born at Lancaster. They spoke about a lot of good things. Now, the requirement for following treaties, for for which you have appended the signatures is actually 100%. That is actually under the principle of pacta sunt servanda and under Article 26 of the Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties. Lawyers can understand. So these violators here say they are leaders, they are Pan-Africanists, but they do less. Why? Free movement within Africa is enshrined under the African Charter on human and people's rights. African leaders have appended signature to that charter that emanates from the Banjul. There is no enforcement procedure when it comes to Uganda. That one I can tell you. If your rights are violated, you cannot go to the African Court on Human and People's Rights. I am happy because my mama is here. I know she usually forces things to happen. So the Attorney General should have deposited a declaration allowing Ugandans before the African Court on Human and People's Rights to allow them to sue in that court. We know what our courts do here. At least let us sue away. From away, you know. Because we do not want guided decisions when the rights of persons are under question. We want decisions that at least, because I know I have ever sued, I became a member of parliament subject to a petition that I lodged before the East African Court against Uganda. I love Mama because she's a speaker that implemented a decision that was against Uganda, which saw me elected. So I can tell you, today, I had to sue 4 countries for orders that they should deposit that declaration. The court said, well, we have got jurisdiction to try this matter. It is very likely that we can order partner states into acceding to decisions of that nature. So African leaders are not Pan-African. That is the major problem. So it remains apodictic for you to expect that precincts that require Pan-Africanism can be achievable by laws that are actually against the spirit of Pan-Africanism in nature. Therefore, in Uganda and Africa, we are dealing with a major problem. And I want to explore this little problem for you to determine whether now we shall get a passport that allows free movement. When actually in Africa, what we are dealing with now is statelessness. So those that you wanted to move freely are actually now even declared stateless. I have looked at documentation of research in Malawi. South Africa is actually dealing with their stateless person is coming from Lesotho and from Botswana. They have been referred to as the Lesotho and the Swana, and they have adopted a principle of citizenship that is in such a way that where you are born is where you are a citizen by birth. In Uganda, for you to prove that you are a citizen, it has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with your parents and grandparents. And by the way, under Article 10 of the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda, even that is not enough. There must be proof of documentation ranging from 1926, when we know very few books had arrived in Uganda for registration. And as we wrap up, please. So as I wrap up, statelessness now is eating into the possibility of free movement. It is actually establishing that there is a possibility of criminality if you cannot prove things that are actually not easily provable. In that regard, my conclusion would be that I think we shall now need to unfasten the tie that we have made. The knot is wrong. We should unfasten it, and a new beginning should emanate from those that have got minds buttressed here and now. I thank you very much.
Special thank you to Honorable Kasambide. And of course, he talked about the issue of free movability in Africa, which is something we have to think about. Someone can fly from Kampala to Dubai direct, but a person to go to West Africa from East Africa has to make several stops and have several visas within their passports. That just doesn't make common sense, and that must be addressed. At this juncture, I'd like to kindly welcome Her Excellency Fatima Fernandez, the ambassador to Venezuela to Uganda. Can you kindly stand up and wave to our chief guests who are here? Thank you so much for coming. At this juncture, I'm going to hand over to the band, and thereafter, after the band, we're going to have a word and a speech from the chairperson of the Pan-African Pyramid himself, Mr. Andrew Irumba. Thank you so much for coming. A lot of speeches are still to come.